Hi, everybody. This is James Gorey with the Banana Republican channel. Thanks for stopping by. Hey, look, if you're a Christian, should you be supporting Israel? And I asked that question because we've talked about it before, but it's a really interesting topic and timely. Um, I think, I'll put it right out there, I think if you're a Christian, you must support Israel. And by that, I mean not slavishly approving of everything Israel does or thinking is the state of Israel is perfect or Netanyahu's perfect. Far from it. Um, Plenty of problems, plenty of failures, plenty of nefarious deeds, I'm sure. But from a Christian point of view, if you're a Christian, then you believe the Bible. If you believe the Bible, then you know what the Bible says and you know what God says. God says, about the Jewish people, about Israel. And he says some very specific things. For one, let's just go back in time. God says, look, this is in the Old Testament too, by the way. So if you're a Jew and you believe the Old Testament, then you know what I'm going to say as well, right? God says, I'm going to scatter the Jews to the four corners of the earth. And he does. But he also says at some point, I think it's in Isaiah, I'm going to bring you back. It's in more than one book, obviously. But I'm going to bring the Jews back. I'm going to gather you back in. And that's what's going to happen, where you're going to come back into Israel. So that's what did happen. And it's a matter of fact. In 1948, that's what happened. Now, the big argument, at least that I can tell from a lot of folks talking about it, is like from Candace Owen, Tucker Carlson, and Dave Smith, and other people. I haven't heard Steve Bannon talk so much about it lately, but the gist of it is that, well, Israel's doing horrible things in Gaza. Now, that is probably true. I mean, undoubtedly it is true. Um, but I don't think everything they do in Gaza is evil, but I think that there's enough bad things happening to certainly paint them with that brush. Children dying is never a good thing. Innocent people dying is never a good thing. So sometimes war is the only answer. I mean, nothing cured Nazis except war. When there was no war, Nazis ran wild. The only thing that cured Nazis was war, and the only thing that cures Hamas is war. That's just the reality. Nothing else is going to cure Hamas. Okay, so that said, if you're a Christian and you don't believe that Israel should be supported or Israel has a right to exist, or to use the Dave Smith argument, well, they displaced hundreds of thousands of people in 1948, which is somewhat true. It's not all true, but it's a lot true. But the same thing happened on the other side. Jews were living in all the nations surrounding the area, not just Israel, Palestine at the time, but in Egypt, in Libya, in Algeria, in Tunisia, in Morocco, in Lebanon, in Iraq, all over the place. So when the 1948 agreement rolled around and the Jews were given Israel, those Arab nations kicked the Jews out, by the way. So it's not just the Palestinian people or the Arabs who were living in the area lost their things. The Jews lost a lot of things as well. And by the way, a lot of those Arab countries said, look, come out of the area because we're going to wage war and drive Israel, the Jews, into the sea, and then we'll come back and celebrate. That didn't happen, but that was the idea. So from a Christian standpoint, you understand that A, God has prophetic intentions for the Jews. B, those prophetic intentions so far have panned out incredibly accurate. I'm going to scale you to the winds. I'm going to make Jewish people a scourge and to be scorned among the Gentiles, and you're going to be persecuted, and you're going to be derided. You're subject or object of derision. And then I'm going to bring you back into the land. And once I bring you back in the land, God says, then you're never going to be uprooted again. And that's in both the Old Testament and the New Testament. I'll leave that to you to find that. But it's in both books. So far, so good. And then God says, well, Jerusalem is going to be a cup of trembling, and it's going to be a stumbling block and an obstacle. And lo and behold, here we are. Now, that couldn't happen until Trump made Jerusalem the capital of Israel again, which back in 2018, which again fulfilled that prophecy. So if you're a Christian, and you read the Bible. If you're a Christian, you have to believe the Bible. If you don't believe the Bible, then you're not a Christian. That's just is what it is. There's no real middle ground there. And by the way, if you're a Jew and you don't believe in God, then you shouldn't really believe in being a Jew either, because the Jews were created by God. For all intents and purposes, God took Abram and Sarai and blessed them with his spirit, and they believed in him, and they became the Jews and changed their name and changed their nature to some extent. And God says, I will bless the entire world through. So if you're a Jew, you're only a Jew because of Abraham and what God bestowed upon Abraham and Sarah. So if you don't believe the Bible, then you're really not you have no claim to be a Jew, as far as I can see. That sounds a little bit, I don't know, it doesn't sound petty, I hope not, but it just seems, if you're going to discount and marginalize or dismiss the source of your identity, then that's not your identity. So you can't claim it then. But from a perspective of a Christian and one who reads the Bible, one who takes it seriously, you look at what Israel is going through right now. Israel is doing not only kind of fulfilling a prophecy, but so are the Arabs. So is Hamas. So is the other regions, the other countries in the region. So is Europe. The rest of the world is fulfilling a prophecy, because it says, God says, the whole world will be against Israel. And that's pretty darn close now. So the whole world can't be against Israel if there's no Israel. Okay? You got to have an Israel. You got to have an object of your scorn, right? An object of your hate. And that's what Israel is. At the same time, God says, look, you're going to go through some rough times, and not everybody will survive. But once you're in the land, you will not be uprooted from the land. So from a Christian perspective, Israel, despite its flaws, despite its mistakes and its wickedness, and by the way, look, the Jews are as wicked as they come. God kicked them out of their homeland twice. How bad do you have to be, right? How bad do you have to behave to have that happen? So it's not about, oh, the Jews are so much better people, although I think their morals are better. If you compare how children in Gaza are raised, what they're taught to believe, Jew hatred, Jew killing, and martyrdom, and all the things that they lay out, that is very important. I mean, what society does that? It's a very sick society, in my humble opinion, and they need the Lord. I don't think they need anybody else. They need Jesus, because Jesus says, let the little ones come to me. That's the kingdom of heaven. God doesn't say, the Lord doesn't say, put suicide vests on your kids and teach them to kill Jews. That's not what Jesus tells you to do. So if you look at this, pull back for a second and get beyond Gaza, Israel has been really doing a great job of eliminating a lot of the terrorist networks in the world and destroying a lot of threats to the world. Iran's air defenses are down, which allowed the U.S. to destroy their nuclear facility. Hezbollah, they got blown up by exploding pagers and phones. So they have a couple, 3,000 or 4,000 of them were incapacitated, and Hezbollah has been decimated. Obviously, Hamas in Gaza has been greatly, greatly decimated. The radical terrorist Houthis in Yemen have been greatly decimated. So you just go around the region, and Israel's really cleansing the region. I don't mean that from a genealogical or a people perspective. I'm saying it from a terrorist perspective. They're taking a lot of bad people out and mitigating, reducing their capabilities. That's a good thing for the region. That's a good thing for the world. So, as a Christian, I can see a lot of flaws. And in fact, the Israeli state can't help but be flawed, because they're not yet fulfilling the final mandate of God and of the Bible, where they will recognize a Savior. But that's not happening right now. So it's happening more, I will say that. But there are some big things happening. They are not hidden. They're out in plain view in the books of the Bible. You can read it. And so as a Christian, they start ticking boxes. You just start, oh, that happened. Oh, Iran attacked Israel, first time ever. Well, that happened. Okay. Iran's aligned with Russia and Turkey. Oh, that's interesting. That happened. So there's a lot of things that are going on that you start ticking the boxes off. You just realize that things are falling into place. So even though you may not agree nobody wants to celebrate the death of children or innocent people, well, except for Hamas, because that's what they did on October 7th. They were gloating and calling their folks and telling their parents how many people they beheaded or killed with their bare hands. So that's who does that. Unfortunately, that aspect of this entire episode, this entire war, has long been forgotten. Long been forgotten, as have the hostages, long been forgotten. Nobody talks about that anymore. Now it's just about the Gazan children. As tragic as that is, and it is tragic, it's a human disaster. It's a human tragedy of high proportions. But for Hamas, it's a win, because Hamas knows that dead children get them where they want to go. And how do I know that? Because that's what happened. You're giving it to them. When you stop supporting Israel, you're absolutely, by default, supporting Hamas. Where do you give that qualifier? Oh, not Hamas, just the Palestinians. No, that you could forget about that. The war isn't the Gaza war, it's the Israel-Hamas war. And that's what it's about. So you can forget about doing this middle ground with the Palestinians. No, that's not real. It's just not real. It's a facade. It's a construct that doesn't really hold up to reality. It's a war between Hamas and Israel and Israel's existence. And the world now is standing against Israel. By the way, God said that would happen too. So there you have it. If you're going to be a Christian, if you're going to call yourself a Christian, then read what God says about Israel, about the Jews, about the Israelis, who's going to attack them, and the outcome. And stand with Israel. Because when you stand with Israel, you stand with God. Or maybe flip that. You stand with God, then you're going to stand with Israel and support them. Think about it. If the Israelis lose, now you've got Hamas owning a state. And how wonderful of a world will that be? Those are my thoughts. If you enjoy content like this and analysis, please subscribe to this channel, support the Banana Republican. Please share, comment, and like. All right, see you next time.